On COVID, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it, there was no new data today because the phase 3 is ongoing. We just gave an update, which we do usually every Friday. The update that as of last night, we had 25,000 participants enrolled in the study out of a goal of 30,000, which is the goal that the FDA has set as what is required for phase 3 filing for approval. And we announced for the first time how many people have got their boost. You remember it's a vaccine with a prime and a boost, like the other key vaccines in that race against the virus. And we've announced that we passed 10,000 participants that got their boost. And that's very important because that will determine the timing to the readout, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But what we announced this morning on this study is that we filed online the full unredacted protocol. As you know, there's been a lot of questions about how the vaccine study is carried. Are they going to be safe once they're approved? And so we wanted to make sure that we get access to the public, to clinicians around the world, to nurses, to the media, the full unredacted protocol of a phase 3. It's 100 plus pages. But it's all online since this morning. And to our knowledge, no other company has done that before, including no other company going after a COVID vaccine. And the third news on vaccine is that we are entering the flu business. As you know, flu still kills 10,000 to 60,000 Americans every year, hundreds of thousands of hospitalization, a big loss of economic output when people are sick. We believe that the current vaccines available are really not very good in terms of efficacy. And we believe with what we have shown so far in the elderly and the quality of our elderly data, that we should be able to go after flu and get a vaccine much more efficacious than what you can get at the CVS pharmacy today. And then we also made some announcement on the therapeutic side in terms of repeat dosing. So that's kind of the big news of the days, plus last night, some new partnership with Vertex on gene editing.
Definitely a lot of energy, Stéphane, around the company, and really a great timing, right? Sort of riding the momentum that you've gained from being a front runner in this COVID vaccine race. But talk to me about the emergency use authorization. We've heard so much really about the filing, and you mentioned the 10,000 who have gotten their booster shot. That gets you one step closer to filing that EUA. With all the political, sort of discussion in the background, are you feeling that pressure to meet that November deadline, or what does your own personal timeline look for that EUA?
So as I've said publicly over the last few days, since we started racing this virus back in the first few days of January, we have had from no governments any pressure to go faster. I will actually say that what we got from the government, the FDA, the CDC, the NIH, Operation Warp Speed, is people wanting to help us and spending a lot of time, including in the evenings, on the weekends, helping us not cut corners, figure out how to go faster, very quick response time. That's what has happened. Our own timeline is what I've shared a few months ago. Nothing has changed. Our base plan is we should get the first interim data in November. There is a best case scenario for October, but it is unlikely because he will assume that the vaccine is of a very, very high efficacy and a lot of infection, because unfortunately, but it's true for all the vaccine manufacturers, because we are all looking for efficacy data, we need in the placebo groups people to get disease, to get infected. And so as you've seen over the last few weeks, the number of cases in the country has slowed down. That could potentially delay all of the vaccine by a few weeks, just because you have less people that will basically get in the study, get disease. But we are sticking to a November timeframe. If the numbers were to slow down a lot in the country in terms of infection, like going from the 30, 40,000 we see right now to maybe 10,000 or less, it could potentially push it to December. But we're sticking with what we do today. Our teams are doing daily reforecasting of epidemiology by zip code. That's how precise the team is doing it. And we're sticking to our guns. We should have efficacy data for this vaccine in November. And if we have a positive signal and efficacy given to us by the safety committee, which monitors and does all the math and monitors safety, we should be able to file very quickly an emergency use authorization that I believe will be limited to high-risk population. It is not for the whole public, but it should be able to help healthcare workers and most probably older people that, as we know, are at very high risk from that disease.
And you're looking at a lot of other sort of things that have given investors a reason to pause because, you know, with the rush to start and you being in the front, you've now sort of slowed down that timeline for various reasons, including your focus on diversity, which sort of matches the national discussion, and none of your competitors are necessarily as vocal on this. Do you think this harms your prospects for the future when you're looking, you know, further down the line for your pipeline?
No, I mean, the way we thought about it is we want to do the right thing. You know, we started the company 10 years ago to try to make medicine to help people. We started racing this virus, one of the first company early January to help people because at the time we thought it was going to be an outbreak. And around the end of January, when I was at the World Economic Forum talking to a couple infectious disease experts and seeing data in real time coming out of China, it became clear to me this was going to become a pandemic. It was already everywhere. And so what we wanted to do for diversity is to do the right thing because we are working hard with the teams and our partners to get the vaccine safely to the finish line. But if, you know, the Latino population, if the African American population doesn't feel that there's enough safety data and or efficacy data for their population and they don't take the vaccine, that's just an awful outcome. We want people to be protected. And as we've seen lately, those minorities population actually have a higher risk to get severe disease or deaths. And so what we decided to do a few weeks ago is to slow down the tail end of the study by focusing on the sites that had very good performance of finding people from minority groups. It was not going to slow down the efficacy readout because, as I said a few minutes ago, it's the first people in the studies that have a chance to read out in November. People that are, let's say, being injected today because there's a boost 4 weeks away. And if you look at the protocol, we start looking and counting positive cases of disease 2 weeks after the boost. It's 6 weeks from now. So if you look at the November timeframe, those people dosing today will have really no impact in the chance to improve the odds of getting efficacy in November. So we thought it was the right thing to do from an ethical standpoint, and it was not impacting the time to efficacy readout. So we decided to slow down, even though it might seem counterintuitive, but it's because, again, it was not going to impact time to efficacy readout.
Stéphane, Dan Roberts here. On the topic of slowing it down, obviously there's very much kind of a race right now, a competition among many names to have that first COVID vaccine. And we've talked on this show about the idea that there can be multiple winners, not just one. Now, that said, is it important to you at all to be first? Obviously, it's going to be important to the stock market. And if it isn't you guys, you know, you wonder if that's going to be damaging as people wait to see the next few vaccines. Does that matter to you at all, being the first with one out?
No, we're not solving to be the first vaccine. We want to have the best vaccine. We want to do it safely so it's trusted from the public and from clinicians around the country. And so I would rather be 2 weeks behind the first vaccine and have the best vaccine and the vaccine that is trusted. Plus, from a business standpoint and potential turnover, it will have no impact because everybody is supply constrained. I'm making as much product as I can now. And as soon as we get the green light from the FDA, if we get it, we will ship to the US government all the vaccines we have in a warehouse. So if you think about it, whether I ship the vaccine I made from mid-November or the week after, it's going to be the same in terms of a Q4 sales. It will have zero impact on sales. We believe we have a very strong vaccine profile because of the data that we have in the elderly. Unlike other vaccines that have shared data in the elderly population, where we have seen a drop in neutralizing antibody in older people versus young people. In the Moderna vaccine, we've shown that we have the same level of antibody in a 22-year-old and in a 75-year-old. And that gives us good hope that this should translate in efficacy in a phase 3. But again, we have to wait for the data in the next few months. But we believe we might have one of the best vaccines. And I would rather be launching a few weeks after the first one because it will have, again, no impact on sales, but we have to do it correctly. Safety is number one priority when you develop a vaccine.
Stéphane, there have been some people who have said that the first round of vaccines, and that includes yours, will likely be less effective because there's still so much unknown about what antibody production means to this virus. How do you sort of rectify that with the optimism of this vaccine coming out this year?
I think it's an interesting scientific judgment that I don't understand the scientific basis. What is clear is you have companies that are, 6, 9 months, 12 months behind the first companies in that race. against the virus that are older, proven technologies. They are just a bit slower to get to a finish line. So it is true that there are vaccines that behind us that have a higher chance of working. But based on the data we have seen where we make high level of neutralizing antibody, we published that in the New England Journal, the top medical journal. We published that in non-human primates, when you give a challenge, so you vaccinate the non-human primate, and then you wait, and then you give them a very high dose of virus in their nose, like 10 to the 6 copy of a virus. And we were able to show we had no virus in the lungs of the animals. And in their nose, we had virus for a couple of days, but much less than what we gave them. And at day 4, they had no more virus, meaning the vaccine could potentially, again, to be proven in human, could potentially reduce infection from people to people. So I think it's very interesting that people have judgment. The data we speak at the end of the day, as always in science.
Hey, Stéphane, Shauna here. I have a question just about timing, just because I was reading a little bit about this in terms of what you released today. And the protocol allows you for the possibility of stopping the trial early if you get enough data, if you get what you need. The fear, though, that's out there is that if you do stop early, then it could lead to this exaggerated perception of the vaccine's efficacy. Where do you stand on that? And I guess, how do you address some of those fears out there just in terms of the public's perception of this?
Yeah, and I think it will really depend on what the safety monitoring board sees in terms of data. If the efficacy is off the charts, it becomes an ethical question to say, do you keep everybody who's on placebo, who has a risk to get disease, and for some of them at high risk to die, do you keep them on placebo? That's going to be a very important scientific, medical, and ethical discussion, which is tough for me to have an opinion today because first I've seen no data. And I could describe different world where in some circumstance we'll say, let's keep going. And in some data sets, we'll say, look, it's just unethical to keep going. Maybe you have to keep going for young adults because they have lower risk, but older adults, you get everybody who was on placebo, you give them the active, the real vaccine. This will all depend on the data. The safety committee will see the data before us. They will make a medical and ethical recommendation. And based on that, we'll decide what we think is the best course for the people that are in the study first.
All right, Stéphane Bancel, the CEO of Moderna. Stéphane, thank you so much for joining the show today. I hope for the world we don't have another 3 to 4 year accelerating event for your company in the next year, but certainly been an incredible year for you guys. I hope we can stay in touch and we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much for having us.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.